What were you thinking? Defying my direct orders like that. You jeopardized the patient. Dr. Ashford thundered, his face a mask of fury. Protocol is there for a reason. You need to follow it. I did what was necessary to save the patient's life, Dr. Washington replied, her voice calm but firm, not backing down. That's not the point. You need to be more careful. This is completely unacceptable. I understand, doctor. I understand, doctor, she repeated, a hint of irony in her tone. Now get out of here. Get out of my operating room. You are not welcome here. He bellowed, his face reddening. Tell me, doctor, she challenged, her eyes blazing. What would you do if someone dismissed your expertise, your years of training, based on nothing more than the color of your skin and the scrubs you were wearing? It was Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. In the bustling emergency department of St. Mary's Medical Center. The ever-present fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh, unwavering glow across the polished linoleum floors. The sterile scent of disinfectant mingled with the faint, lingering aroma of day-old cafeteria coffee, creating a uniquely hospital fragrance. The rhythmic beep of heart monitors formed a constant background hum, a sound every healthcare worker knew in their bones. While most of the night shift staff were a blur of motion, rushing from patient to patient, one figure moved with a quiet, purposeful grace. Dr. Hilda Washington navigated the crowded corridor with an air of calm confidence. Her navy blue scrubs indistinguishable from those of the nurses, her stethoscope draped casually around her neck. At 38, she carried herself with the quiet assurance that comes from years spent saving lives, years of dedicated study and countless hours in the operating room. Yet tonight, to most eyes, she was simply another night nurse making her rounds, another cog in the relentless machine of the ER. But what unfolded next would peel back the layers of assumptions, exposing an ugly truth about prejudice and changing the course of events for everyone involved. Dr. Hilda Washington wasn't supposed to be working the night shift. After completing her demanding residency at Johns Hopkins and a prestigious fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery at the Cleveland Clinic, she had dedicated the last 8 years to building a stellar reputation as one of the most skilled surgeons on the West Coast. Just 6 months prior, she'd been promoted to chief of surgery at St. Mary's Medical Center, making her the youngest person to ever hold that position at the esteemed hospital. Despite her lofty title and demanding schedule, Hilda never forgot her roots. Every Tuesday night, she traded her tailored chief of surgery coat for the anonymity of standard issue scrubs and volunteered for the night shift in the emergency department. She had started this practice during her residency and refused to give it up. You lose touch with the real patients when you're always stuck in boardrooms, she would often tell her colleagues, a subtle challenge in her voice. The night shift keeps you grounded, keeps you honest. Most people, seeing her in those unassuming blue scrubs, automatically assumed she was just another nurse. Hilda had long ago stopped correcting people unless it was absolutely medically necessary. She'd grown accustomed to doctors talking over her head, patients' families demanding to speak to the real doctor, and colleagues treating her as if she were invisible. But Hilda knew something they didn't. Respect wasn't freely given. It had to be earned, painstakingly, through dedication and expertise. And she had earned hers the hard way, one saved life at a time. Dr. Richard Ashford, on the other hand, was no stranger to getting his way. 15 years as an emergency physician had etched deep lines around his eyes, testament to countless sleepless nights and high-pressure situations. It had also cultivated a confidence that frequently veered into arrogance. At 52, he believed he had seen it all, faced every possible medical crisis, and knew exactly how to handle any situation that came his way. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Richard ruled the night shift emergency department as if it were his personal fiefdom. He barked orders at the nurses, often dismissing their observations and concerns, and generally made everyone's job more difficult with his condescending attitude and inflated ego. I didn't spend a decade in medical school to have nurses second-guessing my decisions, he was fond of saying, his voice dripping with disdain. The younger nurses were openly terrified of him, while the more seasoned veterans had learned to navigate around his fragile ego and find ways to work effectively despite his overbearing presence. The emergency department was Richard's kingdom after dark, and he made sure everyone knew it. The department head, weary of conflict and focused on the hospital's bottom line, largely let him run things his way, as his patient outcomes were generally good, even if his bedside manner was atrocious. Richard thrived on the power, the way people deferred to him, the unquestioning respect that came with the title of doctor. Richard stood a towering 6 feet 2 inches, his graying temples and wire-rimmed glasses, which he believed lent him an air of distinguished intellect, adding to his imposing presence. He wore his crisp white coat like a suit of armor, his name and credentials meticulously embroidered in blue thread. Richard Ashford, M.D., Emergency Medicine. In Richard's mind, hierarchy was everything, and nurses, especially young, black nurses, occupied the very bottom rung of that ladder. It was precisely 11:52 p.m. when Dr. Hilda Washington approached bed 7 in the emergency department. The overhead monitor displayed concerning vitals for a 67-year-old man who had been admitted with severe chest pain. The familiar beeping of the EKG was now irregular and erratic, and Hilda's highly trained ear immediately recognized the ominous pattern. Dr. Richard Ashford was standing at the nurse's station, casually reviewing charts with the practiced air of authority he had cultivated over the years. His shift had been relatively busy but routine, and he was looking forward to the usual lull between midnight and dawn. That's when he noticed the nurse in the blue scrubs standing at bed 7, studying the monitor with an unusual intensity. "Excuse me," Richard called out, his tone already dismissive and condescending. "Are you new here?" Hilda looked up from the monitor, her expression calm and composed. "No, sir. I've been here for a while." "Well, then you should know that nurses don't diagnose patients," Richard said, walking towards her with a deliberate slowness designed to emphasize his superior position. "Is there something you need?" Hilda kept her voice respectful, but her gaze remained steady and firm. "Dr. Ashford, I'm concerned about the patient in bed 7. His EKG is showing some irregularities that suggest." "That suggest what, exactly?" Richard interrupted, his eyebrows raised in mock curiosity, his tone dripping with sarcasm. He stepped closer to the monitor, deliberately positioning himself between Hilda and the screen, blocking her view. "Let me explain something to you, nurse. I've been reading EKGs since before you probably knew what one was." Hilda remained outwardly calm, although her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I understand that, doctor. I'm just suggesting that the ST elevation in leads 2, 3, and AVF might indicate that you need to stick to taking vital signs and leave the medical decisions to people who actually went to medical school," Richard snapped, cutting her off mid-sentence. His voice carried just loud enough for the nearby staff to hear, and Hilda noticed Nurse Jessica glance over with a worried expression. Hilda decided to try a different approach, appealing to his sense of reason, however faint. "Doctor, I've seen this pattern before. If we could just consider ordering a troponin level." "A troponin level?" Richard scoffed, the sound harsh and grating in the sterile hallway. "Now you're telling me what labs to order? What's next? Are you going to recommend surgical procedures from your vast nursing experience?" The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a scalpel. Jessica, at the nurse's station, had completely stopped what she was doing, feigning organization of the charts while openly eavesdropping on the escalating confrontation. The patient's family members, visible through the glass door of room 7, seemed to sense that something was wrong, their faces etched with anxiety. "I'm not trying to overstep," Hilda said quietly, her voice carefully controlled. "I'm just concerned about the patient. He's exhibiting classic symptoms." "Your concern is duly noted," Richard replied with dripping sarcasm. "Now, why don't you go check on your other patients and let me do my job?" But Dr. Hilda Washington didn't walk away. She had witnessed too many patients suffer needlessly because someone's ego had stood in the way of good medicine, and she refused to let it happen again. "Dr. Ashford, with all due respect," she persisted, her voice gaining strength, "this patient needs immediate attention. The signs are clear. He needs intervention now." That's when Richard Ashford crossed a line, a point of no return that could never be uncrossed. Listen here, he said, his voice dropping to a harsh, menacing whisper, yet still audible to everyone nearby. I don't know what kind of Mickey Mouse nursing school you went to, but around here we have something called a chain of command. And nurses, especially nurses who think they know better than doctors, need to remember their place. You are here to follow orders, not give them. Hilda felt the familiar sting of injustice, the burning frustration of being judged and dismissed based on nothing more than prejudice. But she refused to let her anger show. Her voice remained steady and unwavering. Doctor, are you really going to let your assumptions about who I am prevent you from providing the best possible care for this patient? Are you willing to risk his life based on your own biases? Richard's face flushed crimson with fury. Assumptions? The only assumption I'm making is that someone wearing nurse's scrubs is a nurse. And if you can't accept that, maybe you're in the wrong profession. The loaded words hung in the air like a suffocating cloud, thick with unspoken bias and simmering resentment. Jessica had abandoned all pretense of working and was staring openly, her eyes wide with disbelief. Even Mike, the security guard making his rounds, had paused near the nurse's station, sensing the palpable tension. Sir, Hilda said, her voice now carrying a distinct warning that Richard, blinded by his own arrogance, was too enraged to hear. I strongly advise you to reconsider your approach to this patient's care. He is crashing as we speak. Richard let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You advise me? That's rich. Mike. He called out to the security guard. I think we have someone here who's forgotten which department she works in. Perhaps you should escort her out. That's when Dr. Hilda Washington reached into her pocket and pulled out her hospital ID badge. Not the temporary, easily misplaced one that night shift workers wore, but the permanent, highly coveted one with the distinctive gold border reserved for department heads and senior staff. Dr. Ashford, she said, her voice now resonating with the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being in command. I am Dr. Hilda Washington, Chief of Surgery at this hospital. Richard's jaw dropped. The clipboard in his hand slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor with a resounding crash. The sound seemed to echo through the suddenly silent corridor, amplified by the stunned silence. That's impossible, Richard stammered, his face cycling through a chaotic mix of confusion, disbelief, and the dawning realization of his monumental blunder. You're a nurse. You're wearing scrubs. Hilda held up her badge for all to see, the clear text and photograph a stark contradiction to Richard's assumptions. Dr. Hilda Washington, Chief of Surgery. The photo matched her perfectly, and the gold border glinted under the fluorescent lights. I wear scrubs because I work the night shift once a week. I believe department heads should stay connected to patient care. It reminds us why we are all here. The proof was undeniable, staring him and everyone else directly in the face. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Mike, the security guard, who had been striding over to escort Hilda out, stopped dead in his tracks, his expression a mixture of bewilderment and suppressed amusement. Even the patient's family, visible through the glass, seemed to sense that something monumental was unfolding, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Richard's face had drained of all color, leaving him ashen and trembling. Dr. Washington, how was I supposed to know? Hilda's voice remained professional, but there was an undeniable edge of steel beneath the surface. You were supposed to listen to legitimate medical concerns, regardless of who raised them. You were supposed to treat your colleagues with respect, regardless of their perceived position. And, most importantly, you were supposed to put patient care first, above your own ego and preconceived notions. Before Richard could stammer another pathetic excuse, Hilda was already in motion, her years of training kicking into high gear. Jessica, please call Dr. Martinez in cardiology. Tell him we have a STEMI in bed 7 and need the cath lab prepped immediately. Time is muscle. Her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had run a major hospital department for years, accustomed to making life-and-death decisions in a split second. Yes, Dr. Washington, Jessica replied instantly, grabbing the phone with practiced efficiency and a newfound sense of purpose. Hilda turned back to Richard, who was still standing frozen in place, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. Dr. Ashford, that patient has been having an active heart attack for the last 10 minutes while we've been having this conversation. I strongly suggest you focus on stabilizing him while we get him to surgery. Every second counts. The next few minutes were a whirlwind of focused, professional medical activity. Hilda took complete charge of the patient's care with the effortless competence of someone who had handled thousands of similar emergencies. Her movements precise and decisive. Richard, still reeling from the revelation of Hilda's true identity and the magnitude of his error, mechanically followed her orders, his arrogance momentarily shattered. The nursing staff looked on with a mixture of awe, respect, and quiet vindication. As the patient was wheeled toward the cardiac catheterization lab, his wife grabbed Hilda's hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, doctor. I don't know what just happened out here, but I could see you fighting for my husband. I know you saved his life." Hilda squeezed her hand gently, offering a reassuring smile. "That's what we're here for, ma'am. Dr. Martinez is one of the best cardiologists in the state. Your husband is in good hands. We'll do everything we can." 3 days later, the patient made a full recovery, thanks to the swift and decisive intervention that Dr. Hilda Washington had insisted upon. Meanwhile, Dr. Richard Ashford found himself sitting across from the hospital's chief administrator and the director of human resources, desperately trying to explain and justify his reprehensible conduct. "In my 15 years here, I've never had a complaint like this," the administrator said, his voice grim as he reviewed the incident report. "Multiple staff members witnessed you dismiss Dr. Washington's medical judgment based solely on what she was wearing, and your comments about knowing her place were completely inappropriate and frankly, appalling." Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair, sweating profusely. "I made a mistake. I didn't know who she was. I just assumed." "That's exactly the problem," the HR director interjected, her voice sharp and unwavering. "Your behavior would have been completely unacceptable regardless of Dr. Washington's position. You dismissed valid medical concerns, created a hostile work environment, and potentially jeopardized a patient's life. We take this matter very seriously." Meanwhile, Dr. Hilda Washington had returned to her regular duties as chief of surgery, but the story of her courageous stand had spread like wildfire throughout the hospital. Nurses approached her with a newfound respect, not because they hadn't respected her before, but because she had demonstrated her unwavering commitment to patient care and her willingness to challenge the established hierarchy, even when disguised as one of them. "Dr. Washington," Jessica said during a chance encounter in the elevator, her voice sincere, "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did the other night. A lot of nurses have been dismissed and belittled by Dr. Ashford over the years. It was good to see him taken down a peg." Hilda smiled, her eyes twinkling. "Patient care doesn't have a hierarchy, Jessica. Good ideas can come from anyone, regardless of their title or position. We all have an obligation to speak up, to challenge the status quo, and to advocate for our patients." Dr. Richard Ashford was suspended without pay for 2 weeks and required to complete sensitivity training and professional development courses focused on communication and unconscious bias. He returned to work with a significantly more subdued and humbler attitude, though some wondered if he had truly learned the valuable lesson or was simply being more cautious about who he chose to dismiss and demean. The incident became a powerful teaching moment for the entire hospital, prompting a reevaluation of communication protocols and a renewed emphasis on respect and collaboration among all staff members. Dr. Hilda Washington used the incident as a case study in presentations about inclusive leadership and the critical importance of actively listening to all team members, regardless of their title, appearance, or perceived status. But the true lesson extended far beyond the sterile walls of the hospital. In a world where people are too often judged by their outward appearance, their race, their gender, or their assumed position in the social pecking order, Hilda's story served as a powerful and timely reminder that expertise, wisdom, and compassion can emerge from the most unexpected places. Every single person deserves respect and consideration, not because of their title or position, but because of their inherent worth as a human being. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person you are so quick to dismiss might just be the most qualified person in the room, the one with the knowledge and insight to make all the difference. So, the next time someone tries to pigeonhole you, to confine you to a box based on how you look or what they think they know about you, remember Dr. Hilda Washington. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for what's right. And never, ever let anyone's prejudices or preconceived notions prevent you from doing your job, from pursuing your dreams, and from making a positive impact on the world. Because you never truly know who you're really talking to, what hidden talents they possess, or what extraordinary contributions they are capable of making. And more importantly, everyone, without exception, deserves to be heard, to be valued, and to be treated with the dignity and respect they deserve, regardless of who they are or where they come from. If you enjoyed this inspiring story of justice served and assumptions shattered, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will challenge your perspectives and ignite your spirit. And let us know in the comments below. Have you ever been underestimated or judged unfairly because of how you looked or what people assumed about you? Share your story below. We'd love to hear from you.